Hey, team players, and welcome back. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the New England Patriots, where they are right now, what they look like after the draft, and kind of what we feel we should expect from the Patriots year out. This is going to be based in reality, what we think that they're going to be. They're in a division that has a very difficult schedule thrown at them. The entire AFC East is required to play the AFC West and the NFC East. So, with the exception of 3 games, that's the base 14 games of this entire division. And just as a starting point, you got to look and say, this team had holes last year. I mean, I think that's pretty safe to say, right? I mean, they ran the ball incredibly well. Very good running team. Couldn't really pass it to save their lives. Didn't really help themselves tremendously in the athletic department of their wide receiver world. And we look at them on defense, and maybe they got an edge rusher, maybe not. We're going to see here. But the one thing we know they got is they got special teams help, Bob. Let's go draft some kickers as opponents, baby.
I mean, let's be honest here. New England had the worst or one of the worst special teams last year.
They did. And it was rated, 31?
They were perennially one of the best special teams. So I'm not going to dog Bill Belichick and his staff for drafting both a punter and a kicker. But we also do know that punters and kickers can sometimes take some time to mature. So I don't actually see the problems that New England had on special teams last year actually solving themselves this year. One of the things, though, and the biggest upgrade, I believe, for New England this year is getting rid of Matt Patricia.
Well, yeah.
The New England offense was so abysmal last year that at times you were wondering if you were actually watching a Bill Belichick coach team, because it is not what we have seen in the past. And, there is drop-off, a major drop-off between Brady and Mac Jones. However, when we look at what they were trying to do, it wasn't really effective because, you make Ramondre Stevenson and you have Damian Harris last year, and you had to run them a lot. So you're basically running them into the ground. And then when you had your quarterback, either Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones on the field, it just wasn't doing anything. And you could say, and we've talked about this with New England before, you could say it's the wide receivers' faults, but it was definitely a lot of the coaching problems, that there was a lot of, you put a defensive-minded guy in charge of coaching the offense, it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And you saw that it was like the offense was trying to play a style of offense that, they weren't throwing the ball downfield. They weren't getting it past 20, 30 yards down the field at any one point in time. And we talked about this, and we said, is it the talent level of player? Well, certainly there's a piece to that. But when you mentioned at the beginning there that they didn't really get more athletic on offense either by taking Juju Smith-Schuster, and now he's on the roster. They got rid of Jacoby Myers left.
Which is a net negative in speed. I mean,
Nelson Aguilar is gone as well. So you're looking at a team on offense, at least, that is basically the same. And the only change that we are looking at is the offensive mindset. And so with Bill O'Brien coming in, you have to think to yourself, this offense is going to be different. This offense is going to change, and it's going to be better. Here's the rub. They're actually playing a lot of good teams this year.
They have a very hard schedule.
You're looking at, like you said, the AFC West and the NFC East. Kansas City is going to give them a tough time. Mm-hmm. You're looking at, and I don't think that the Patriots defense was good last year. I talked them up a lot last year. They did a lot of good work, but they didn't really go after. If you take a look at who they got this offseason, so let's the biggest additions this offseason. I'm just going to read the biggest additions from NFL.com.
Yeah.
You added Juju. You added Mike Gesicki. 2 pieces that you obviously needed. You need someone who's going to be possession. You need someone who might be another weapon in Gesicki. They went out and got Jabril Peppers. They went out and got Jonathan Jones.
Bob, I need to pause you on that. Don't they still have the other 2 tight ends they signed like 3 years ago?
Yes, but I'm saying New England.
How many tight ends does he need?
New England needs weapons. It doesn't matter where those weapons are at. New England needs to find a way to use their weapons. And a lot of teams like Bill Belichick, they've always gone out. And you think about what Bill Belichick has done in the past, right? Mm-hmm. You say, okay, he has Tom Brady, and then you look at the rest of the team and Julian Edelman, Randy Moss, and then the rest, Troy Brown, and then the rest are like, okay, whatever. You could plug in Corey Dillon and he could do what they needed him to do. You could have plugged in LeGarrette Blount and the offense worked. The offense worked. So it didn't matter who was on the field because the offensive mindset was, I'm going to find this guy that has this level of talent or this ability, and I'm going to go and do it. Well, what we see, and I believe at one point in time, they even had Jonathan Stewart doing something. And at one point in time, you see them with Cam Newton recently. And so you look at this, you look at these additions, Jabril Peppers, Riley Reiff, James Robinson. James Robinson is nothing. He's just nothing. I mean, he had those pretty decent years in decent 1 year in Jacksonville and, went to the Jets last year, just hot garbage. Then you lost your punter, which is not really a loss because, whatever, Myers, Harris, and Aguilar. And so you look at this and you say, well, they got worse. So then you take a look at their draft and you say, okay, well, who did they draft? Well, they drafted Christian Gonzalez at cornerback.
In a fantastic move, yeah.
That's a fantastic move because they had more holes than Swiss cheese in terms of what to fill because they had all those free agents leave from their defense and from their team in general.
And also, Belichick with a great corners. When he has a great corner, he ends up having the best defense in the league.
Yeah,
and Gonzalez is going to be that.
There's no question in my mind that this defense is going to be good because they also got Keon White.
Especially the second half of the year, once they gel.
They got Keon White, the defensive end, and then they take a guy from Sacramento State, a linebacker. Okay, whatever.
That's where the draft fails off the worlds.
Then they take a center from Troy, then a kicker, then a guard, then a guard.
Here, let me give the ESPN ranking here. So for the Sacramento State kid, ESPN had him as the number 7 inside linebacker. And going back to what we were talking about with Baltimore, I prefer getting ones from schools like this because they're not protected by good defensive fronts. Yeah. So this is the kind of under-the-radar guy that Belichick loves doing.
It's a fine pick.
I think that ESPN obviously only gave him a 70. I think that he's got potential because of his situation to be better than that. But the kid out of Troy, first off, wasn't even, in terms of the centers that were still on the board at that point, was like the 5th best one left. like what were they doing?
Yeah.
I understand there's risks in the one from Ohio State that went in the 7th round, I believe, to Cleveland. Okay. But that's who they should have taken. And this guy from Troy ain't gonna hit the field. He's not gonna make the team. It's not good.
Yeah, and that's my
it's a 4th round pick.
That's my worry when a team has teams love to have picks, but the picks in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, we're looking at a wide receiver from Liberty, the cornerback from Michigan State in Amir Speed, and Jackson State cornerback Isaiah Bolton. I guarantee you all 3 of those guys will get cut, and/or one of those guys, probably the corner, one of those corners will probably end up on the practice squad. But as I see it, and they take Kayshon Boutte from LSU, the wide receiver. And so when we take a look at this team, these are players outside of Gonzalez and Keon White. These are players that are going to take time to adjust to the game, to adjust to the system. And for a team that wants to win right now, that's probably not going to happen. And Bill Belichick picked a good year for that to happen because this schedule is going to be brutal for the New England Patriots. Like we were saying, you've got the AFC West. Outside of maybe beating the Broncos and maybe beating...
I don't think it's a maybe. I think a lot of people are going to be beating the Broncos this year.
And maybe beating the Raiders. You're looking at those. You're looking at those 2 wins. You're potentially looking at a win in DC against the Commanders.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
You're also potentially looking at a win. I believe they play the Colts this
I
year.
don't know who the crossover games are. Well, it would be the Colts because the Colts finished in 3rd, and so did they.
You're looking at the Colts. You're looking at maybe they'll take a game from Miami. Maybe they'll take a game from Miami, depending on when they play and what happens. But I see this team as being, at best, 7 or 8 wins again. And there's really no upward momentum because Mac Jones isn't the piece, and you didn't go out there and get the pieces that's going to help you beat Patrick Mahomes. You didn't go out there and get the pieces that's going to help you beat Buffalo twice a year. You didn't go out and get the pieces that's going to help you beat the Chargers. And you didn't get the pieces that's going to help you beat Dallas or the Steelers. I mean, then that game's probably going to be, if that game is the last game in the year, that could potentially be a fight for the playoffs. And, you know, it's a shame to say it, but they went and did things, but it doesn't seem like enough for a team where the struggles were real for them last year on offense. And they actually got rid of one of their weapons that was actually helpful to them. And this team I don't see as being better than 8 wins. Maybe they'll eke into the playoffs, but the AFC East is such a hard conference right now, hard division.
Oh, it is.
It's just not going to – I just don't see it. No matter how good that defense plays, they're not going to play lights out like that all season.
So overall, I think we get to a similar thing, but there are some very good things that the Patriots did that I liked. One of the things we criticized both Cleveland and the Ravens for last week was that they tried riding the line. Instead of going all in on one side of the ball and becoming a lead at it, they tried to do both and really failed everything altogether, especially Cleveland. So what these guys did is they said, you know what? We're not going to win a shootout. It's not happening. So what are we doing? We're going to try to run the ball and make a very good defense. That's how they're built. I mean,
and they went and got those plays.
And they've leaned into it. My problem with this is that when you do that, unless you even when you have Derrick Henry, you're putting a lot of pressure on the one running back. And historically, Bellachick does not rely upon one running back. And if you look at this roster right now that Harris has left, they don't have a viable second. And if you're going all in on a running game, if Stevenson goes down, what do they have? Because the receivers they brought in, 0 speed. Juju will knock your lights out, but he ain't outrunning anyone. And you got 3 tight ends as your next best pass catcher.
Yeah.
Again, not outrunning anyone. So what they are inviting with their offensive scheme is incredibly challenging because everyone knows you're running the ball. You can't run behind any secondary. There's no reason not to have basically the entire defense in the box.
Exactly.
So it's playing 1940s football.
And that's why I say
the Jets got Rodgers, that would have been the most disgusting game ever.
Yeah, and that's why I say that when we were talking about leaning in on a certain part of your team and certain aspects of your team, you can see through this draft. They leaned in. They said, our special teams suck. I'm going to go out there and draft something new. My cornerbacks, I need improvement. I'm going to go out there and get 4 of them, 3 of them. I know that I want to run the ball, so I'm going to go and look for guards and tackles in the later rounds that are going to allow depth in case my guys get hurt, that I am not going to miss a beat and I can continue to run the ball. But like you just said, the most damaging thing that they did this year was not re-signing Harris or not going out and getting a guy that wasn't James Robinson. Now, Belichick has had success with retread running backs before, but this is a different age. And like you said,
I wonder if he was expecting either Mixon or Dalvin Cook to get cut.
I mean, they still might.
That to me seems like that's what this roster is missing right now. It is that type of quality established back who you're not going to be the guy, but if you put Dalvin Cook at the changeup, it's going to be good.
If they can control the ball, this is a 10-win team. If they can't control the ball, this is a 6-win team. And the issue with this whole team in that they leaned, like when we look at good defenses, this is a good defense.
It is.
But they're also playing really good offenses.
Yeah,
And so it's matching strength for strength. And in order, when you're matching strength for strength, then the other player's weakness has to be weaker than yours. And when you look at what New England's weakness is, it's quarterback. And I'm looking at the other teams in the division, and I'm not seeing that Buffalo's defense is weaker than Mac Jones. I'm not seeing that the Jets defense is weaker than Mac Jones. And I'm not seeing that, Miami's defense is weaker than Mac Jones. And you look at it and you say, holy crap, if you're a New England fan, you say, I have to rely on Mac Jones again. And he barely puts up any. I mean, they can put up points, but it really is dependent upon that scheme. So, like we said, Bill O'Brien, he knows what he's doing. If he doesn't get this act together in New England, this is going to be a very, very short leash for Mac Jones this year.
That's probable. Because, I mean, Jones is at the make or break it point. Like, either you're the dude or you're not, and this you got to prove it. They just made it so hard for him. First off, they brought back Reef, who's like 90 years old in NFL standards, to be their tackle. And the other tackle they imported from the worst offensive line in football last year, which was the Denver Broncos. So it's like what they're making it harder than they could be. And there's no, like I said, when there's no downfield threat, you have to win this game with 6-yard runs consistently. And that's very hard to do when everyone knows you're doing it.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do.
And one last thought on New England here.
They'll beat the Colts, though.
Is that thinking about, Hall of Fame head coaches. When we think about Hall of Fame head coaches, are we thinking about Hall of Fame head coaches tied to one player? Or are we thinking of Hall of Fame head coaches tied to a wide variety of teams? And so we talk about Bill Belichick being a Hall of Fame coach. We talk about Mike Tomlin being a Hall of Fame coach. I'm ready to see them be the Hall of Famer that I think they are by coaching a guy that's not a legend and coaching a second legend, I should say, or a second great quality quarterback. Like, I'm excited to see, I'm blanking on his name right now. Head coach of the New Orleans Saints went to Peyton. I'm waiting to see if Peyton can do the same thing because if I can do it with one and I'm really good, then I should be able to do this with multiple. And so I'm very, very curious. Like Andy Reid, Hall of Fame head coach.
Oh, yeah.
Heads and toes. You get Patrick Mahomes. You get
even one with Alex Smith.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough that he's probably the best head coach of all time, ahead of Bill Belichick.
He's missing a little bit of hardware. I mean, Mahomes needs to start racking some of these things out to get there.
I know, but I mean, just by coaching standpoints, he's done it with players that are absolutely inferior to other players. And
that's what Belichick's going to have to do this year. I mean,
that's
you
what you
look at this offensive skill group, it has some inferiorities. And the thing that this offense is missing, which maybe you get out of a second rounder, but probably not, is it does not have an elite pass rusher. So the pass rushers are how you put teams away with your defense.
Yeah.
And they really don't have that.
We'll definitely see what happens, and maybe Keon White can develop it. But as I said, these are guys that are development guys, and if they can develop in the right way and be taught in the right way, and I think Bill Belichick and his staff can do that, then this team will be good for the future. But I just don't see this team as being good right now, and I think that they're going to be looking elsewhere come December of next year at quarterback.
Yeah, when the schedule comes out, this is definitely a team I would rather play in the first half of the year than the second half of the year, though. Because that defense, once it gets established, will be very. It'll pull some surprises on people and be like, "Whoa, they just beat the Chargers," and that just saying that sentence out loud.
Well, we know the Chargers' worst enemy is themselves anyway. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That just sounds right. Like that's the game Herbert will throw 4 interceptions and just keep throwing them.
yeah, that will happen. But I mean, there's positives to look forward to, but you've got to really get through all the negatives or just the fog to get through them. And right now, New England has a lot of fog, and maybe that will clear up a little bit more come the offseason. Maybe they'll go out and get an explosive weapon. There's no explosion on the team, and
that's the biggest issue.
Ramondre Stevenson is super talented, and Juju is good enough. And you look at it and you're like, well, they need explosion. And when we talk about the Jets, if they get Breece Hall back, there's explosion for that team, and that's what New England's missing. And you don't want to, if you're a fan, you don't want to watch a 9-3 slugfest. You don't want to watch.
You're gonna have to if you want to win.
16-7. You don't want to, but you're going to have to, like you just said, you're going to have to watch that because that's the way New England's going to win.